Welcome to 1984 Law, and today we consider the question, given the near omnipotence of the totalitarian party, when exactly was Winston Smith exposed as a thought criminal? Of course, there are spoilers ahead, so if you haven't read this great work, then pause and read, or better yet listen to it on audio before you continue. By exposed, of course, this is not a reference to his and Julia's capture above Mr. Charrington's shop. Some have speculated as to the very moment Winston was caught, or rather uncovered, to the prying eyes of the Thought Police. Winston himself informs us that his own personal rebellion against the party had been a years-long affair. Quote, "The actual writing would be easy. All he had to do was transfer to paper the interminable restless monologue that had been running inside his head, literally for years." In Chapter 4 of Book 3, we do have a definitive answer. Quote, "From the moment when he was inside the Ministry of Love, and yes, even during those minutes when he and Julia had stood helpless while the iron voice from the telescreen told him what to do, he had grasped the frivolity, the shallowness of his attempt to set himself up against the power of the party. He knew now that for 7 years the Thought Police had watched him like a beetle under a magnifying glass. There had been no physical act, no word spoken aloud that they had not noticed, no train of thought that they had not been able to infer. Even the speck of whitish dust on the cover of his diary they had carefully replaced. They had played soundtracks to him, shown him photographs. Some of them were photographs of Julia and himself. Yes, even he could not fight against the party any longer. 7 years. The reference to the replacement of the speck of dust firmly covers the entire plot, another way of highlighting the apparent futility of Winston's defiance. The story, of course, begins with Winston's opening of his diary. Since no physical act had gone undetected, we can assume they knew of his visit to the prole prostitute before he confessed it in his diary, as well as his conversation with the old man in the prole pub, for instance, and perhaps every encounter between him and Julia, including their initial meeting, though Julia thought they were quite safe in their hiding spot. We have a time for the exposure, but just how did Winston give himself away? There are at least 2 ways this could have happened, though the following is merely speculation, though educated guessing, based on the lore of the book. Interestingly, there is a subtle connection made between Winston, Parsons, and the manner in which the latter was exposed. Parsons, Winston's stupid fellow tenant in Victory Mansions, had been denounced by his own daughter when she overheard him talking in his sleep, shouting, "Down with Big Brother." Winston himself seems to foreshadow this in Book 1, Chapter 6. Quote, "The most deadly danger of all was talking in your sleep. There was no way of guarding against that, so far as he could see." To further flesh out this connection, Winston himself, though not in sleep, but while deep in thought in Chapter 1, writes repeatedly and quite unconsciously, "Down with Big Brother." Of course, this is all just speculation. However, this doesn't appear to be a meaningless connection. The exact same wording is used. Given we know from Winston's own careful nature to avoid the appearance of abnormality, could he have exposed himself through such an outburst in sleep years before? Another means by which exposure is possible is for a lapse in outward appearance. Winston is horrified to see an ordinary-looking man in Chapter 6, Book 1, passing by, his face twitching habitually, possibly unconsciously. Winston sadly notes how he was probably done for. With this way of exposure, we also have a connection with another character. In Book 2, Chapter 2, Julia and Winston talk during their first meeting in the clearing. Quote, "What could you see to attract you in a man like me? It was something in your face. I thought I'd take a chance. I'm good at spotting people who don't belong. As soon as I saw you, I knew you were against them." Given the excitement of the meeting, it's very easy to overlook this statement, but in truth, upon deeper reflection, This should have sounded alarm bells in Winston, and is perhaps a greater indication of how he exposed himself than the talking in his sleep theory. Julia, a young, fairly ordinary member of the outer party, at least in terms of intelligence, was able to spot that Winston did not belong. How much easier would it have been for a member of the Fort Police to pick him out? So Winston was always under the eye of the Fort Police from the beginning to the end of the plot. He was being watched for 7 years, though we cannot know exactly how he was initially exposed. Two feasible options in-universe ways of exposure are talking in your sleep and allowing your face to portray an inner turmoil or other indication of thought crime. What do you think? Did Winston expose himself? What gave him away? Write in the comments section, and if you like our videos, hit that thumbs up button and subscribe for more from 1984 lore.